Greetings and salutations, fellow radical fairies. I am Jerry the Fairy, and I would like to talk about some of the roots of the radical fairies, since radical means to the root. Um, we were examining the roots of what it means to be a faggot. How do you deconstruct that politically, socially, even economically? When we started the Radical Fairies, we started it as really a group of radical faggots. At the time, that is what the movement was about. It was a gay men's movement, and we were very concerned that the gay movement was being assimilated into a hetero-imitative movement, that our history and culture, which had been purposely eradicated by Christianity and other social forces, was going to be lost forever if, like Native Americans who were denied speaking their own language in white man's schools, we allowed ourselves through assimilationists to think that we were just like straight men. One could loosely say that most of us were gay hippies, but on a deeper level, we were coming from a number of backgrounds. Harry Hay and John Burnside, Joey Kane, a number of the intellectuals in the early movement were atheists. Many other people came with a background in Wicca, in paganism, with a variety of New Age belief systems, working with Native American spirituality. Some were Buddhists, some were Hindus, some had no real practice at all. And we came together to explore who we were. And this was before AIDS. It was before the war on drugs. It was before Reagan. And there was an atmosphere of sexual liberation and joy in our sexual liberation. There was a great deal of hope for transformation at the time. One of the things we looked at was economics. We had long discussions in developing the no one turned away for lack of funds policy. We talked about things like who really contributes to the good of the people more, a low-paid child care worker or a $200 an hour corporate lawyer. If they both come to a gathering, should the child care worker who can't afford to pay the suggested donation work in the kitchen to feed the corporate lawyer? Or should there be an egalitarianism that transcends the class boundaries that we have in the outside world? And our approach to politics, our approach to social injustice, was to take our rage and anger about social injustice and to transform it with our creativity, with nuanced intellect, with humor, of course, humor. And we had many askance actions. I mean, there were direct actions too. In 1987, when the United States Supreme Court reaffirmed criminalizing the sodomy, among the hundreds of people who were arrested were a large number of radical fairies. I remember Eric Slade and William Gersten were two of them. We sat in the offices of pharmaceutical companies to make them give us whatever drugs were available at that time, not very effective for AIDS, and so forth. But we had askance actions. There was a fairy named Gary Reynolds in Santa Cruz who's has passed from AIDS, and they put up a big sign for a whiskey advertisement on a billboard that said "Straight Man's Drink," and it showed the man holding a straight of cards in his hand. Well, Gary got some fairies to climb up on the billboard one night, repaint it, cross out "Straight Man's Drink," and say, "Don't drink, be gay," and they changed every card in the man's hand to a queen. Now, this is an example of askance action. Today, for instance, if all of the gay men who are involved in straight people's weddings threatened straight weddings by saying, if you vote against our weddings, you're not going to have any weddings because without us, your decorations won't match, the bride's hair will look like trailer trash, the food will be awful, and your wedding will have the ambiance of a tailgate party at a football game. That's a scance act. That's the kind of things that the radical faeries would do. I was once with Harry Hay at Ronald Reagan's 85th birthday party Republican fundraiser. We're actually in front of the fundraiser, protesting, of course. And Nancy Reagan's limousine pulled up, and she gets out, and we're all going, shame, shame, shame. She ignores us. One of the faeries yells out, ugly dress! She whipped around. She knew that when a faerie said her dress was ugly, it probably was. That got her attention. So where do we go today? The faerie movement has certainly changed quite a bit. Sometimes I question whether faeries have become a little bit too cute, whether we've lost our transgressive edge, whether we've gotten more into our beautiful attire, our having fun, our enjoyment of being with each other at gatherings, and forgotten some of the deeper roots of the radical faerie movement in politics and fighting for social justice, and also our intellectual roots of exploring our ideas and concepts. This is the kind of thing I search for in the radical faerie movement today. I mean, I'm concerned sometimes that the faerie movement itself is kind of diluting and assimilating, a bit like the hippie movement did, if you know what I mean, and that intellectually it may be turning a bit into a mushy blur. But I think there's a core of us who would like to prevent that and inspire younger people to explore what their ideas are in a deeper way, because it has to happen now. It's, I'm in my 50s, and it's a new generation that, needs to deal with our times in their way. And it makes me really glad to see a new generation of faeries continuing the movement, and I'm very curious to see what they will do and what kind of society they will work to create. And I just want to say something about Wolf Creek, because the Nominous Radical Faerie Sanctuary in Wolf Creek is a very special place and central to a lot of at least the West Coast faeries. And I don't even want to talk about the subject of women in the faeries or a pangender movement, because I think that that's been an ongoing discussion that everybody has pretty much heard everything there is to be said about. What I do want to talk about is what I think was our greatest success at Wolf Creek, and that I am proud of the years that I put in going to endless meetings at Nominous to help create that sanctuary. And that is the wonderful transformative experiences of exploration, self-discovery, meeting wonderful people, and through their interactions creating communities. Creating a space that is literally surrounded on four sides by low hills, so you are in kind of a magical separate space, which is not only safe, but is free as much as possible of the hetero and cultural influences of the outside world, to give you a space to be yourself and be creative. And I believe that having the space for gatherings, for people to have these transformational experiences, has been a huge success. And it's experimental. We don't know if we'll ultimately be successful, but we do know that for 22 years we have been able to maintain this space. And I think that is our greatest success, and what I personally am most proud of as a faerie. So thank you, and as our pagan and Wiccan friends say, blessed be.